Once near a great forest lived a poor woodcutter with his wife and his 2 children. The boy was called Hansel and the girl Gretel. He had little to eat, and once when great famine fell on the land, he could no longer even get daily bread.
Now he thought about this at night in his bed. He tossed about in his anxiety, and he groaned and said to his wife,
"What is to become of us? How are we to feed our poor children when we no longer have anything even for ourselves?"
"I'll tell you what, husband,"
answered his wife.
Early tomorrow morning, we will take the children out into the forest to where it is the thickest. There we will light a fire for them and give each other of them one more piece of bread, and then we will go to our work and leave them alone. They will not find the way home again, and we shall be rid of them.
"No, wife,"
said the woodcutter.
"I will not do that. How can I bear to leave my children alone in the forest? The wild animals would soon come and tear them to pieces."
"Oh, you fool,"
his wife said in a disgusted tone.
"Then we must all 4 die of hunger. You may as well plane the planks for our coffins." And she left him to no peace until he agreed to the plan.
"But I feel very sorry for the poor children, all the same," said the woodcutter in a sorrowful voice. The 2 children had also not been able to sleep for hunger, and had heard what their stepmother had said to their father.
Gretel wept bitter tears and said to Hansel, Now all is over with us. We shall surely die in the great woods."
"Be quiet, Gretel," said Hansel, trying to comfort his little sister. "Do not distress yourself. I will soon find a way to help us."
And when the old folks had fallen asleep, he got up, put on his little coat, opened the door below, and crept outside. The moon shone brightly, and after the white pebbles which lay in the front of the house glittered like real silver pennies. Hansel stood and stuffed the little pocket of his coat with as many as he could get in. Then he went back and said to Gretel,
"Be comforted, dear little sister, and sleep in peace. I have a plan." And he lay down again in his bed to sleep.
When day dawned, but before the sun had risen, their stepmother came and woke them and awoke them saying, "Get up, you slugworts. We are going into the forest to fetch wood."
She gave a little piece of bread and said,
There's something for your dinner, but not to eat before then, for you will get nothing else." Gretel took the bread under her apron as Hansel had the pebbles in his pocket. Then they all set out together on the way to the forest. When they had walked in a short time, Hansel stood still and peeked back at the house, and did so again and again.
His father said, "Hansel, what are you looking at there and staying behind for? Pay attention and do not forget how to use your legs." Ah, Father, I am looking at my little white cat, which is sitting up on the roof and wants to say goodbye to me.
Fool, that is not your little cat. That is the morning sun, which is shining on the chimneys. Hansel, however, had not been looking back at the cat, but had been constantly throwing one of the white pebble stones out of his pocket onto the road. When they had reached the middle of the forest, the father said,
Now, children, pile up some wood, and I will light a fire that you may not be cold. Hansel and Gretel gathered brushwood together as high as a little hill. The brushwood was lighted, and when the flames were burning very high, the woman said,
Now, children, lay yourselves down by the fire and rest. We will go into the forest and cut some wood. When we have done, we will come back and fetch you away. Hansel and Gretel sat by the fire, and when noon came, each ate a little piece of bread, and as they heard the strokes of the wood axe, they believed that their father was near. It was not the axe, however, but a branch which he had fastened to a withered tree, which the wind was blowing backwards and forwards. And as they had been sitting such a long time, their eyes closed with a fatigue, and they fell fast asleep. When at last they awoke, it was already dark night.
Gretel began to cry and said,
How are we going to get out of the forest now? But Hansel comforted her and said,
Just wait a little until the moon has risen, and then we will soon find the way. And when the full moon had risen, Hansel took his little sister by the hand and followed the pebbles which shone like newly coined silver pieces, and showed them the way. They walked the whole night long, and by break of day came once more to their father's house. They knocked at the door, and when the woman opened it and saw that it was Hansel and Gretel, she said,
You naughty children, why have you slept so long in the forest? We thought you were never coming back at all. The father, however, rejoiced for it, and had cut him to the heart to leave them behind alone.
Not long afterwards, there was once more great dearth throughout the land, and the children heard their mothers saying at night to their father,
Everything is eaten again. We have 1/2 loaf left, and that is the end. The children must go. We will take them farther into the woods so that they will not find their way out again. There is no other means of saving ourselves. The man's heart was heavy, and he thought,
It would be better for me to share the last mouthful with her children. The woman, however, would listen to nothing that he had said, but scolded and reproached him. He who says, I must say be. Likewise, and as he had yielded the first time, he had to do a second time also.
The children, however, were still awake and had heard the conversation. When the old folks were asleep, Hansel again got up and wanted to go out and pick up pebbles, as he had done before. The woman had locked the door, and Hansel could not get out. Nevertheless, he comforted his little sister and said,
Do not cry, Gretel. Go to sleep quietly. The good God will help us. Early in the morning came the woman, and took the children out of their beds. Their piece of bread was given to them, but it was still smaller than the time before. On the way into the forest, Hansel crumpled his in his pocket, and often stood still and threw a morsel on the ground. Hansel, why do you stop and look round? We must keep moving. I'm looking back at my little pigeon which is sitting on the roof. He wants to say goodbye to me.
Fool, that is not your little pigeon. That is the morning sun that is shining on the chimney. Hansel, however, little by little threw all the crumbs on the path. The woman led the children still deeper into the forest, where they had never in their lives been before. A great fire was again made, and the mother said, "Just sit there, you children, and when you are tired you may sleep a little. We're going into the forest to cut wood, and in the evening, when we are all done, we will come and fetch you away."
When it was noon, Gretel shared her piece of bread with Hansel, who had scattered his by the way. Then they fell asleep and evening passed, but no one came to the poor children. They did not awake until it was dark night, and Hansel comforted his little sister and said, "Just wait, Gretel, until the moon rises, and then we shall see the crumbs of bread which I have strewn about. They will show us our way home again."
When the moon came, they set out, but they had found no crumbs, for many thousand of birds which fly about the woods and fields had picked them all up. "Hansel," said Gretel,
"We shall soon find the way." But they did not find it. They walked the whole night and all the next day too, from morning till evening, but they did not get out of the forest, and were very hungry, and they had nothing to eat but 2 or 3 berries, which grew on the ground. And as they were so weary that their legs would carry them no longer, they lay beneath the tree and fell asleep.
It was now 3 mornings since they had left their father's house. They began to walk again, but they always came deeper into the forest, and if help did not come soon, they must die of hunger and weariness. When it was midday, they saw a beautiful snow-white bird sitting on a bough, which sang so delightfully that they stood still and listened to it.
And when its song was over, it spread its wings and flew away before them, and they followed it until they reached a little house, on the roof of which it alighted. And when they approached the little house, they saw that it was built of bread and covered with cakes, and that the windows were of clear sugar. We will set to work on that, and have a good meal. I will eat a bit off the roof, and you, Gretel, can eat some of the window. It will taste sweet."
Hansel reached up above and broke off a little of the roof to try how it tasted, and Gretel leaned against the window and nibbled at the panes. And then a soft voice cried from the parlor, "Nibble, nibble! Ah, who is nibbling at my little house?"
The children answered, "The wind, the heavy-born wind,"
and went on eating without disturbing themselves. Hansel, who liked the taste of the roof, down a great piece of it and pushed out the whole of one round window pane and sat down and enjoyed herself with it. Suddenly the door opened, and a woman as old as the hills, who supported herself on crutches, came creeping out. Hansel and Gretel were so terribly frightened that they let fall what they had in their hands.
The old woman, however, nodded her head and said,
"Oh, you dear children, who has brought you here? Do come in and stay with me. No harm shall happen to you." She took them both by the hand and led them into her little house. Then good food was set before them, milk and pancakes with sugar, apples, and nuts. Afterwards, 2 pretty little beds were covered with clean white linen, clean white linen, and Hansel and Gretel lay down in them, and though they were in heaven,
The old woman had only pretended to be so kind. She was in reality a wicked witch who lay in wait for children, and had only built a little house of bread in order to entice them there. When a child fell into the power, she killed it, cooked it, and ate it. And that was a feast day with her. Witches have red eyes and cannot see far, but they have a keen scent like the beasts, and are aware when human beings draw near.
when Hansel and Gretel came into her neighborhood, she laughed with a malice, and said mockingly, "I have them. They shall not escape me again."
Early in the morning, before the children were awake, she was already up, and when she saw both of them sleeping and looking so pretty, with their plump and rosy cheeks, she muttered to herself,
"That will be a dainty mouthful." Then she seized Hansel with her shriveled hand and carried him into the little stable, and
She cried to the girl,
"Stir yourself and bring me some water. Let Hansel be fat or lean. Tomorrow I will kill him and cook him." However, the poor little sister did leave him, and she had to fetch the water, and how her tears did flow down her cheeks. "Oh, what will we do? The wild beasts in the forest had but devoured us. We should at any rate have died together." "Just keep your noise to yourself,"
said the old woman.
"It won't help you at all." Early in the morning, Gretel had a little bone to her, and the old woman, who had dim eyes, could not see it, and though it was Hansel's finger, and was astonished that there was no way of fattening him. When 4 weeks had gone by, Hansel still remained thin and was seized with impetus and would not wait any longer. "Now then, Gretel,"
said the old woman.
"I've already heated the oven and kneaded the dough." She pushed poor Gretel out to the oven, from which flames of fire were already darting. "Creep in,"
said the old witch.
"and see if it is properly heated, so that we can put the bread in." At once Gretel was inside, and she intended to shut the oven and let her bake in it, and then she would eat her too. But Gretel saw that what she had in her mind, and said, "I do not know how I'm to do it. How do I get in?" "Silly goose,"
said the old woman.
"the door is big enough. Just look, I can get myself in." And she crept up and thrusted her head into the oven, and then Gretel gave her a push that drove her far into it. She shut the iron door and fastened the bolt. Then she began to howl quite horribly, but Gretel ran away, and the wicked witch was mercifully hurt to death.
Gretel, however, ran like lightning.
Gretel had to look out and hang up the cauldron with the water and light the fire. "We will bake first,"
said the old woman.
"I've already heated the oven and kneaded the dough." She pushed poor Gretel out to the oven, from which flames of fire were already darting. creep in
said the old witch.
and see if it is properly heated so that we can put the bread in. At once Gretel was inside and she intended to shut the oven and let her bake in, and then she would eat her too. But Gretel saw that she had what she had in her mind and said, I do not know how I'm to do it. How do I get in? Silly goose,
Said the old woman.
the door is big enough. Just look, I can get myself in. And she crept up and thrusted her head into the oven, and then Gretel gave her a push that drove her far into it. She shut the iron door and fastened the bolt. Then she began to howl quite horribly, but Gretel ran away, and the wicked witch was mercifully hurt to death.
Gretel, however, ran like lightning to Hansel and opened his little stable and cried,
Hansel, we are saved! The old witch is dead! Then Hansel sprang like a bird from its cage when the door opened. How they did rejoice and embrace each other and dance about and kiss each other, as they had no longer any need for fear her. They went into the witch's house, and in every corner there stood a chest full of pearls and jewels. These are far better than pebbles.
These are far better than pebbles, said Hansel, and thrust into his pockets whatever could be got in. And Gretel said,
I too will take something home with me, and filled her panny full.
But now we must be off so that we may get out of the witch's forest, said Hansel. After walking for 2 hours, they